welcome back to Digital December. Today we are talking about ZipForms. Let me go back to the dashboard. Oftentimes when you log into ZipForms, it's going to take you to your dashboard. Know that you can change where you get logged into. So if you come up here to your profile, which is on the upper left-hand side, you go to Profile and Settings. You definitely want to spend some time there. You know, I feel like we've been talking about this all month. Every time we've gone someplace, just where you're headed when you log in. So you've got About Me, Sign In and Security, Offices, Forms, Products, Settings, right? So here's where you can choose your e-sign options. We're going to cover Authentisign today, which is the free option through ZipForms. Previously, I would have said DocuSign was far superior to the free version and worth the $20 a month that it costs you to have DocuSign. But now with Authentisign, I would say go free. I would say cancel your DocuSign membership and go free. Who wants to spend money when you don't have to? Your landing screen. So this is where, when you log in, where it goes. So I have it go to my transaction list. So your options are dashboard or transaction list. I don't ever go to the dashboard. So I have it go to transaction list. And the default view of transactions are transactions shared with me or my transactions. Okay. Your intervals for auto save, you can adjust that. So how often it auto saves when you're in there messing with stuff. Hide the global navigation bar, right? So you've got so many options in there. Your default mortgage rate is in there. You can link to other ZipForm accounts, and then you've got other options there as well. So just kind of keep that in mind. Our ZipForms membership is through CAR. So anytime we go to link our ZipForms with any other document signing program or like Glide or anything, we do need to put that you log in with your association credentials, okay? Not directly in the ZipForms, just so you know, a little tidbit there. Notification settings, or if you have an assistant or transaction coordinator, you can add them there, okay? So again, when I log in, it takes me to transactions, which is where I like to work out of. That's this page here. It shows all my active ones, and then pending, and then closed, inactive. Now, I don't move them through from active to pending. I usually go active, and then once we're closed, you have the option to export to archive, or you can just go in and change the status of it. I don't like it to continue to show up once it's closed, so you can edit that. But, oh, right here where it says active, you can just click on the active button there. And here's where you could move it to closed, which is what I do most of the time. Okay, so I just move it on over to close. It's going to ask me for a closing date. So if this one closed today, let's see, it's the 18th today. Oh my goodness. It's almost Christmas. And then hit OK. And then it'll tell you how long it's going to keep it. And then you just hit save. And now it's going to take this one here. It'll move it down to close. So it's off my active screen. So that's what I like to do. That brings me joy and happiness. To create a new transaction, you just come up here to the new button. We hit new listing or new purchase, depending on what it is. Just so everyone knows, if I have a listing, it all goes under one listing file. And if I have a buyer, it goes under one purchase file. So if we make an offer on a property today and it doesn't get accepted, I don't go in and create a new offer file. I just revise the existing one. So let's go in there and just hit new purchase. You can name it whatever you want to, but I would normally name this one like last name and then purchase. Okay, so that I can keep it straight. If I've got two buyers with the same last name, I might do last name, comma, first name. Here you can go to MLS Connect. Okay, so as we're creating a new buyer transaction, this is where the joy and happiness comes in. We hit this MLS Connect. You can actually connect to the MLS, so your primary MLS, and then you would put in the MLS ID here. I have no idea what property this is. I'm going to hit include photo and hit find. Oh, it didn't like it. All right, not a big deal. It's probably because it's a closed listing now. Not a big deal, but you plug in your listing ID, you hit find. I always click the button to include the property photo. It'll populate it here. And then what happens is it'll also populate the address here. It'll the list price, date, and agent ID. Then you just click use listing. And then what it's going to do is it's going to pull all that information from the MLS into your ZipForms file, including the listing agent's information, the APN number, the address. It's like magic. Okay. If you don't have that, or there's no MLS Connect, or you're creating a listing, then you would just create the category. I have templates set up. So because I have templates set up, it's going to automatically populate this template to my file. Okay, we're going to talk about templates on another date. So there, once you create that file, it's going to open it. And then what I normally do is I hop on over to, so normally MLS Connect is going to pull it over. If you might be able to link RPO, let's try that. See if that's a free option there. Thinking hard. I may run out of patience before it populates. All right. We're just going to leave that alone. All right. So from this screen, if you did the MLS Connect, you can auto-populate. If you created the file before you had a property, so you didn't use MLS Connect because you wanted that BRBC sign, the buyer representation and broker compensation, that would be appropriate there. But now you've got the buyer that's got the BRBC signed, and now they've found a property. Super simple. Once we're inside this transaction, and to get inside this transaction here, let me take you back to the list because I created a new one. It created that file. So here's that purchase tile. Keep in mind too that you can toggle between a list. So yours might look like this, or it might look like the tiles. To toggle between the two, it's in the upper right-hand corner. My cursor's over it right now, but it's got 3 little lines or 4 little lines up there. If I click that, it's going to move it to list view. And when it's in list view, it shows a block up there to switch it over to tile view. All right. So to open it, I just click on the box, or you click on that transaction, brings it back to here. I would start by going over, here, what we were going to do. Hold on, before we go to parties. If you wanted to pull over that listing information after you get that BRBC sign, now they found the property. Up here on the gray toolbar, that is everything that has to do with this transaction, or well, both the dark gray and the light gray, but here's your MLS Connect. So you can click on that from here, and then it'll pop up that same window to pull in that MLS data. So if we've already written an offer for this buyer, it did not get accepted, or they canceled out on it because they didn't like the condition of the property or whatever that might have been, we can, and now we're getting ready to write a new offer. We would just come in here, hit MLS Connect, pull over the new listing information. It's going to say, hey, do you want to override the existing? You're like, yes, I do. And then it'll pull over and overwrite all that old information with the new listing that you're going to make an offer on. All right, so that's the MLS Connect there. You can go to parties is where I like to go next. Here's where I would add my buyers in. So we can just click here. We can click buyer 1. Here's where you'd put buyer 1's name. And you also want to put in an email, buyer 1 at fakeemail.com, and then hit save. You want their legal name in there, how it's going to show up, how it either, if it's a listing, how it shows up on title, or if it's a buyer, how it shows up on their pre-approval letter from the lender. We actually just had one that we put into contract where what was on the contract did not match what the pre-approval was or what was on their proof of funds. So we actually had to go in there and do an addendum to clarify the buyer's name so that they all matched. So there's buyer 1. You can put in buyer 2 here. Okay. Same thing, legal name. If the pre-approval letter has a middle initial or middle name, you absolutely want to put that in there. fakeemail.com. All right. And you want to, you want to put the email in there because that's going to allow us, when we get ready to send it out for signatures, that's what's going to allow us to send it for signatures, is having that email in there. Okay, so I've got buyer 1, buyer 2. If you know the seller's information for writing an offer, it's always a good idea to go to the MLS, hit that APN number that we showed you yesterday that'll pull up the seller's names, and make sure to populate sellers' names in here. Okay, I promise you, it will make the listing agent happier the less that they have to do on an offer. So if they have to populate all the sellers' names to get the seller to accept it, you know, somebody else who has a similar offer as you with the seller's names all fully completed, they may decide to go that route. So make sure it's fully completed. Okay, so that's under the parties. It's gonna, when you pull over that MLS Connect, it's automatically gonna put in the listing agent's information there. It's got my information here because I've already got myself set up as in the template. Okay, so once I have my buyers in there, the sellers, then what I like to do is I like to move over to documents. And that's where I'm going to spend most of the time in this file from here on out. Okay, so because I have a template set up, it already pulled in all the forms that I like to use with my buyers. So I've got the BRBC, that's the Buyer Representation and Broker Compensation Agreement. Along with that, I like to send out the Market Conditions Advisory and the statewide buyer and seller advisory. And those just state that, hey, like market conditions is the market's cyclical, there's ups and downs. Make sure you know what kind of market it is. And ultimately, you're in charge of the price you decide to offer on the property. The statewide buyer and seller just talks about all the 27 different ways that they can have the property inspected. I think there's actually more than that. Wildfire disaster advisory, oftentimes I send out with the purchase agreement. Sometimes I send out that market conditions or the statewide with the purchase agreement as well. And then you've also got that buyer identification of preferences and priorities. I'm surprised the new one's not in here because they just updated this. And then you've got the buyer financial and personal information. So those two link up with that buyer representation agreement. Okay. If you don't have forms in there already, or you want to add additional forms, the way you do that is over here in the upper right. It says all forms. You just click on that. It's going to open up your library of forms, starting with the California Association of Realtors forms. You can search for forms here. So maybe I wanted an addendum. I can start typing in the name. If I know the acronym for that, I can type it in, or I can type in the full name. Okay, so addendum there. To add it, we just click on it. It'll highlight blue on my settings, and then it'll add it at the bottom of my transaction list. So once something's blue over here, I know it's in my transaction already. If you are looking for a different form, we do have access to other libraries. You've got the Solano Association of Realtors. That's the Disclosures and Disclaimers Advisory. So there's where we would find that the Solano County PDF document that all of our clients have to sign. You've got car sample letters, which is kind of a fun library here of forms: acting against broker advice, belief of abandonment, broker trust account. There's just some cool, there was, I don't remember what the really fancy one was. Demand that offer be presented to seller. So anyways, there's just some neat stuff in here that you can go in there and play around with. Some of the other libraries that you have are the EPUBs. This one is, you know, the forms that get attached to our natural hazard zone disclosure report, the environmental hazards, the protect your family from lead, home energy rating pamphlet, homeowner's guide to earthquake safety, the earthquake hazards report, the signature page. That's all in this right here. You've got a cyber crime flyer, information on dampness and mold, new construction purchase. So anyways, there's some random stuff in here. So if you need that signature page, I usually send that stuff out via Glide, which we'll talk about tomorrow. So I don't have to go in here, but those forms are available in your car forms library. For foreclosure prevention library, NAR code of ethics, mediation forms. So there's just some cool things in here that you may find useful and helpful. All right. So once you've added the forms that you want, we just hit the little X and that closes out. The other thing that happens is if I click on the screen over here, so I've got that open, it also goes away. Okay. Now, if I want to edit some forms, well, okay. So just being transparent, I mess with parties and documents. I don't do checklist. I don't do notes. I will do e-sign. I don't worry about history. So those are kind of off the gray toolbar, what I use. Okay. Parties, documents, and e-sign. e-sign up here is going to open up if I've got any packets, which I'll show you a little bit later when we get into this. This is where you can go in and check on the status of those packets. Okay. This gray bar, the light gray bar, is going to be if we click this e-sign versus this one on the dark gray bar, this one's going to prompt us to start a new signing packet. Okay, so if we wanted to just come in, get something signed and send it on its way, like the acceptance of a counter offer, this is the fastest way to do that. We just say, hey, do this, and then we can add that document in a minute. You've got your MLS Connect button that we already talked about. You've got your Record Connect, which has to have a address in there. You have Apply Template. So if you have a template you want to apply, you can click on that. You can add documents from here. This is going to prompt you that, hey, we can either browse for one, we can create a placeholder, we can add a form from your Google Drive, from your Dropbox. So if you wanted to add a form from your computer, you could do it here as well. Okay, you can also do this inside the editor or inside the signature. All right, we're going to hit cancel, cancel. All right. So that's add doc. If you wanted to add a folder, maybe you were trying to like keep things organized in here, you could click add folder. And then there's a disclosures button that I've never in my life hit. I think you have to pay for it. Oh, you still have to have the city, street address. You have to have the full address in there. Okay. So now if I want to edit a document, the cool thing about DocuSign, or not DocuSign, but ZipForms now is we used to have to edit one document at a time. You'd edit like the purchase agreement, and you'd come back and select the market conditions advisory, and then you'd come back, and it was tedious and cumbersome. But now we can edit multiples at the same time. So let's say that I was going to do the BRBC and the BFPI as well as the BIPP. And I believe the BIPP and the BFPI, which is the buyer identification of preferences and priorities and the buyer financial and personal information, you can also send out through Glide. Okay, but if we wanted to edit them here and have them ready, maybe they're getting ready to come in the office and we wanted to have it all printed up and ready for them to sign, we could select whatever we want to sign. Then we're going to come up here and we're going to say open in Forms Editor. Okay, notice that once I've selected some documents, it gives me options. So before we just went to disclosures, but now that I've got documents selected, I have move, so I can move them into a folder. So if I created a folder, you check those boxes, you hit move. I can print them. Okay, so I can print them up, so I have copies of them. I can send them out via email. Okay, I can open them for editing. I can save them as a PDF, and it'll ask me if I want to save them to the file or to my computer. I can download them, same idea there. I can preview them. I can copy them. I can archive them, or I can delete them. Okay, so many options there once you've got some forms selected. But what we're going to do is we're going to go into Forms Editor. Now, keep in mind that if we forgot to add a form when we selected the form editor, it's not a big deal because anything, so once we've got the form editor open, which is where we're at now, over here on the right-hand side, it says Forms and Documents. Up top, it says Workspace. That's what's currently in my editing program that I can mess with. And then we have grab from transaction. So if there was something in the transaction that I forgot to add that I wanted to add, I could just come in here. I click on there's like 6 or 8 little dots, 6 little dots. I just click it and drag it up to the top. You can also reorder these. So if I wanted like the market conditions advisory as the first document or the last document, I can move it around. Now, if there's a document that's not in my file yet that I wanted to add, I would just come in here and click this add button underneath the workspace. It's going to say, hey, here's some suggested forms. There's nothing there. Here's my forms library. So here's all libraries. So I could select, hey, I just want the car forms library, or maybe I want the Solano Association of Realtors. I want to add this disclosures and disclaimers. I just click add. It's going to add that into my workspace for me. The other option is upload. Here's where you can upload files from your computer to add to this file. Okay, so those are your options there. If there's something that you don't want here anymore, you can just hit the little X and it'll take it off your workspace. It will keep it in the transaction, but take it off the workspace. Okay. If you want to edit the parties, maybe you forgot to put the buyer's names in there. You can do that here as well. We can hit add new parties, roll. We could say this is going to be buyer 3, right? The other option that we can do is we can hit add. We could add from ZipForms contacts or add from Google. So you've got a couple of different options there under parties. The next thing that we have is the listing information. So here, if you didn't use MLS Connect to pull it over, you can import tax records, import listing. Okay, you have to still have the address in there for the tax records or the listing there. This is just pulling up that MLS Connect again. So there's several different ways in which you can utilize the MLS Connect. Again, if we already had pulled a listing into this transaction, we want to put in the listing ID here and then click this box to replace existing data with imported data. Okay, so you've got a couple of options there. Let's try putting in a street address. California. Let's see if we can get it to pull over the tax records. Oh, look at that. All right. So here is, it pulls in the owner's name. How do you want it displayed? Look at this. This is where you can pull in the seller's information and you can make it display correctly. Yay. Here, if there was a seller too, you could put it in there. It's also got the parcel numbers. It's got the lot description, the lot number, the subdivision. I'm going to click replace existing and hit import. So you have two options here where you can pull in either from the MLS Connect or you can pull in from tax records. If you pull it in from the tax records, it's going to populate those sellers' names for you versus the MLS Connect is going to pull over the listing agent's information. So you may want to do both. Okay, you may want to start with MLS Connect and then import over the tax record information. Okay, that is listing information. You've got other info here. Here's where you could put in the purchase price, deposit, offer date. I don't go into other info. Your clauses, we'll talk about that later, but this is where you can create things that you're typing in all the time on these forms. You can create clauses for that. You just hit create a clause and then it'll save it to your library so that you always have that for the future. Under tools, this is where you could add text box or highlight. So let's say that I forgot to put in a name on a form, or maybe we're populating over, maybe it's the seller counter offer and they did not put the buyer's names in. We could click on this text box, click anywhere where on the form, you can put buyer name there, right? Whatever that is. Then if you click back on it here, notice you can change the font size. We can shrink it. We can change the color. We can change the font family. We can make it look different. Okay, Arial does match what else is on the form. And then I like to go bold and italic because then it matches what else is typed onto the form. Okay, so I usually keep it Arial. I go bold, italic, and then I reduce the font until it matches kind of what's already there so that I have that information. Okay, if we decide we don't want that text box anymore, we can just hit, well, before we do that, just keep in mind you can click on any of these, which will make it bigger or smaller. This one up here will tilt it. Okay, and if we decide we don't want it anymore, you would just click on it like that and hit the delete button. Usually works. Otherwise, you can hit this delete button down here, this red delete. Okay, that's gone. You could also highlight something. There we go. We've got highlighted words. Okay, so you've got that option as well. So that's under tools. Where you're going to spend most of your time is going to be in forms or just in editing whatever you've got going on there. So this through here is the editor. I think I still have the highlighter selected. Let's see how I can get off the highlighter. Nope. There we go. All right. Now we're going back to forms. All right, so here we can just click on each box to edit it. So if we needed to change the buyer's names, now keep in mind that if I edit the buyer's name here in this screen, it's going to update that on the party information. So if I type the buyer's name incorrectly, I could fix it here. So I could make it like O-N-E. And then once I fix it once, it's going to fix it on the entire, all the forms that I'm editing. Okay, so if I wanted capital last names, there we go. Okay, now my information's already auto-populated because that's part of my template that I have set up. So again, we'll talk about that in the future. But here's where you would just go through and update that information as you wanted it updated. Okay, so you can just scroll through each page and make sure that all the lines, anything that you can change is going to be highlighted blue. Or I think you can change that so yours might be a different color, but anything you can mess with. Now, when we get down to like the PI, see these red ones? That's because those are ones that we cannot edit. Okay, these are all buyer things that can and should be edited. If I go to send this into signatures, it's going to pre-populate optional signature blocks or text blocks in those items. But that's what it shows up as red. So white is just here. See how this, I can't edit this buyer name. I'd have to edit it someplace else, and see how it updated all the buyer's information with that capital last name. So, so that's how you maneuver through the workspace. You can just keep scrolling down for each one. I could click on the form. It'll take me to the first page of that form. Okay. Or if you just keep scrolling, it's going to take you from one form to the next. Okay. I'm still on the BRBC. I'm on the buyer identification now, so it'll just keep going through. All right, so that's how you edit it. Now from here, I'm going to take off some of the extra forms. It won't let me, it hates it. Oh, because it's probably marked on my purchase agreement. Nope. All right. If they're marked on, it's marked on my BRBC that they're gonna submit the buyer identification of preferences and priorities and the buyer financial and personal information. So it automatically keeps those on the form. That's all right. So now what we're gonna do is we can go from here. We can print them up here at the top. So you could print it. And just so you know, you can print it as is. So you filled it out. That's what print means. Print blank is, hey, I just want a blank one printed out so that I can fill it out in person, or we could print out a sample. So if I was going to print out a listing agreement, like a blank listing agreement or whatever, for a pre-listing package, or maybe I'm going to include some additional forms with maybe a copy of the RPA with my buyer presentation, I could print sample. And then what happens when you print sample is it says sample on all the pages so that somebody couldn't turn around and then use that themselves to make an offer on another property. Okay. So anytime you're going to print it to hand to somebody that doesn't have any information filled out, you want to print sample. All right. So you can print them. You can download them here. That's the download button. Do you want to download as a single file, multiple files, or a zip file? Okay, so if I downloaded this as a single file, it's going to combine all three of these forms into one and just download it as one document. Versus if I say, hey, I want multiple files, it's going to download it usually into a zip file that then you have to open up. And then we'll have each of those forms listed individually. Okay, if I hit the back button, it's going to take me back to my transactions. Here you can hit the save button. So if you have trust issues, just every once in a while, you can hit that save button to make sure it's saved. Just so you know, if it's not saved and I hit the back button, it will ask me if I want to save it, or if I'm trying to go on to anything else, it's going to make sure that it's saved. Okay. Next, the other button that you have is prepare signing. So if I want to go from here to signing, I just hit prepare signing. And then it's going to prompt up and take us over to your signing software. Okay, so if you're using DocuSign, this is where it's going to prompt you for DocuSign. I use Authentisign because, again, it's free. And I actually think the functionality at this point is actually better than DocuSign. Here's where I would put in the signing name. I always like to name my files with the main point of why we're signing, whether it's the BRBC, whether it's an offer. If it's an offer, I'll usually put 123 Sample Street offer so that I know which address it is. The reason for that is it's going to create a little folder for it. Makes it easier to find in the future rather than just letting it populate a name for you. The return folder option, you can select something from your file. I just leave it blank and then it'll create a new folder just for this signing. Okay, so I'm going to say, hey, this is the BRBC. I'm going to hit create. It's going to take me from ZipForms into Authentisign. So now I'm inside the signing, which looks a lot like the editing. Here's where our first step. So across the top, just so you know, you can blow it up. You can increase the size. Okay, you can decrease the size. You can change the name. If you forgot to change it, you can change it there. You can print this, you can download it, and you can save it. Okay, if I hit back, it's going to take me back to my transactions, not back to the editor. And if I hit next, it's going to proceed on with setting this up for signatures. Okay, the first thing that you want to do here on the toolbar on the right-hand side is your signers. We want to add participants. So we're going to click that button. Here's where most of the time, if you've got your buyers or your sellers, whoever you're working with, already as part of this transaction, you're just going to click Add from Transaction. Here it's going to give you the people, the parties that are in this transaction. So you're going to click the ones that you want to include. Keep in mind that don't click yourself if you have nothing to sign, because then it's going to say, hey, you've got a signer that doesn't have any lines associated with it, and you're going to have to delete yourself later. Okay, here is your options. You've got a remote signer, you've got a reviewer, or you've got a CC. Okay, so this is a really good thing because let's say that I've got a VA purchase. The military member is the only one that's actually going to be on the loan. So we're just going to have them be the one signing everything. The other spouse isn't signing anything, but the other spouse still wants to be included. We can add the other spouse. They wouldn't be here. We would click add participants. We would say, hey, we want to add new or add from contacts. So if it's in your ZipForms contacts, you could do it here or add new. I'm going to hit add from contacts. I'm going to search for Amy. Okay, and then I can select that person or I could hit add new, and then we want to make them either a reviewer or a CC. So a reviewer would get a copy, they could review it, or a CC. I actually don't know the difference between CC and reviewer, but so oftentimes I say, hey, reviewer, I think maybe they can make comments, where a CC just gets a copy of the documents. So now I've got those. I forgot to finish adding the other one. So we're going to go in here and hit the buyer 1 and there, and the buyer 2, and hit select. These are all remote signers, meaning that, hey, we're going to email this off to them for signatures. So see here, I've got reviewers and then remote signers. If you want a signing order, this little toggle here at the top will put them in order, and then you can move them around. Okay, in that order, you can click and drag. You can actually renumber them. The only time I ever use a signing order. So why would signing order work? Signing order is great if you have 2 buyers or 2 sellers using the same email address. Okay, if you've got 2 people that are signing using the same email address, then that's a great way to make sure that it keeps it organized, because buyer 1's going to get an email to sign their documents. After they sign, then, you know, the next one, buyer 2 would get another email to that same email saying, hey, it's time for you to sign. So that's why I like the signing order. Most of the time I leave it off, because when I leave it off, what this means is any one of these 4 people can click on that link at any time and sign their documents. They can sign them at the same time. It doesn't matter. Okay, so most of the time that's what I do. Now, because these all have roles associated with them, buyer 2, buyer 1, and selling agent, it's already populated their signature blocks on those documents. If they didn't have roles associated with them, you forgot to do that, it didn't do it automatically, then we would just come over here to map signers. Here's where we'd say, hey, signer role buyer 1, who is that signer? Who's going to be the buyer 2? You would put their name there. Who's going to be the selling agent? Who's going to be the listing agent? Okay, this only if you're sending out an offer or a BRBC, it's just going to be selling agent, which is the agent who brings the offer. This is, I think, the only place that has not yet been updated. So hopefully they'll do that soon. But so you have the listing agent and selling agent. So that's the difference there. Okay, and then you would hit assign signature blocks, and it's going to put those on the forms for the forms that it recognizes. Let's see, I think that's all there on that page. The next little tag is the documents. Here you can reorder the documents. So if you'd like them to go out to signers in a specific order, you can reorder them. It's going to pull them over in the same order that they were in our editor. So if you reorder them there, you'll be good to go. If you forgot to reorder them there and you have a specific order, you can do it here under documents. You can also add documents here. So this, you can hit add document or form. You can add things from the transaction. So if you're like, oh man, I was supposed to add that addendum, it didn't get moved over, you can add it in. Now keep in mind though, it's not going to let you edit that form inside of the signing software. It's just going to let you add the form and add signatures to it, or you can add text. You'll see that when we get to tools. You can also upload forms. So maybe you're sending this out for signatures along with a seller counter offer. You can upload that seller counter offer right here, and it will add it in so that you can sign it. Or if you've got saved files in this system, then it will have it there as well. Okay, so that's how you can add documents. The next one is the tools. This is where you can actually access the signature blocks. Okay, so here, this one's all correct. Notice it's got, I'm looking for 3 colors because I've got 3 signers, the names here. Now, if one of these signature blocks was wrong and I wanted to change that one, I could just click on it over here. I would just say, hey, nope, that's actually buyer 2. See how it changed it to purple. Now I've got 2 buyer 2 blocks. So you don't have to delete and re-add blocks if one's incorrect. You can just go in there and fix it. You can also enlarge it or make it smaller from here. You can make it required or optional just by toggling the required button. You can add a name block, which means, hey, right below it, it's going to put the name of the signer there. We can add a date stamp. Okay. We can add a time stamp. So you may want a date and a time stamp if you want it time stamped. Okay. We're going to add that date. I don't know why it took the date out of there, but that's all right. All right. So there's your options there. And then you can, you know, I already talked about the scale. All right. So then once we're done, if there's a signature block that's in the wrong spot, you could come in here and click it and say, hey, no, delete that one. And now it's gone. Okay. Now you're like, oh man, I didn't really mean to delete that. We want to add that back in there. We would just come up here. Remember, that was buyer 1. So we're in signing tools. From the drop down, you're going to select buyer 1. But let's pretend I forgot to do that. We're going to say, oops. And then I'm going to click this sign here. I'm going to click it and drag it to where I want. Then I'm going to click and move this date over here with the rest of the dates. And I want the signature to be the same size. So you can just shrink it down here, or you can adjust the scale bar over here. And then you're like, oh, man. I just realized that that's the wrong person. So remember, click on it, come over here to the drop down, buyer 1. It's going to update that information, both the signature line and the date line. Okay. The other options that you have, let's find a page with more white space on it. Notice it's got all my initials. So anytime I put something into signatures, even if I know it's going to auto-populate, I still scroll through every page and I just make sure those signature blocks are on there where I think they should be. Now notice as we get down here. All right, so see how this is all green now? And it matches the buyer 1. This is going to prompt the buyer 1 to add text or check boxes here. If I click on those, see how they're not required. These are all optional lines. So it's going to prompt them to go through this. Personally, I think it's really confusing to try to do this through ZipForms, which is why I would either do it in person or send it out through Glide. So I would never send this out actually through Authentisign, because then the buyer can pick and choose what they want to fill in and what they don't want to fill in. So it's not my favorite there. All right. Oh, if we wanted to get rid of a doc, maybe we decided one wasn't necessary, we could just click on that. So I just went up to documents. I clicked on that document. I said, hey, remove this one. I don't want it anymore. Now it's gone. Poof. Okay, so just like you can add a doc, you can erase a doc. So we just click on it. You can replace it. It'll prompt you for what you want to replace it with. You can remove it. You can select it. Okay, so we can hit remove file. Now let's play around just a little bit here. We're going to go to upload. I'm going to click on this to upload a document from my computer. Oh, let's pick something exciting. Let's go with the buyer contingency removal. Let's see if it'll do that one. All right, so I'm going to add this file to the documents. Oops. Let's scroll down to find it. Here's that buyer contingency removal that I uploaded. So then I would go to documents. I can click on this buyer contingency removal. The layout here, I could say, hey, we want contingency. Oh, it doesn't have it in here. Sometimes you can find those system layouts in here, and then you can actually map it and it'll add those signature blocks for you. So if you've got like, let's try, okay, hold on, let's do a different file. We're gonna add document, upload. I'm sure I've got one in here, so we're just gonna scroll down. Here's my Laura offer. Residential purchase agreement. Right, so if you have a listing and the buyer's made an offer and now you want to accept that offer, we can come in here to this California residential purchase agreement. We can say, hey, this is what we want to assign it to. Oops. California residential purchase agreement. We're going to hit apply. Also, too, just so you know, if we add documents into ZipForms, so if I had added this document into ZipForms under my listing, ZipForms is actually smart enough now that it's going to look at that form and say, hey, we've detected information on this form. Would you like us to input it into your file? So it'll usually pick up like the buyer's agent and the buyer's names if you have a listing. Okay, you can also map those signers. So we could go, hey, seller 1 is going to be buyer 1, seller 2, buyer 2, just for kicks. So we're going to put those in there. Oh, it took those off there. That's sad. Well, that's all right. That'll work. All right, we're going to hit assign signature blocks. I just want to show you how this works. And then we're going to hit save. So now if I scroll down to the residential purchase agreement, let's go back to signers. Usually it'll go ahead and like kind of apply it like a template. So I'm surprised it didn't do that. Let's go back. We're going to map those signers. Well, it's non-functioning today, but oftentimes it'll go ahead and place those signature blocks for you. All right. So the other things that you have under tools are, hold on, this is an intentionally left blank page. That'll work nicely. We have the signature block. So that's sign here. If we just click on it, it throws it in the middle of the page. If you want to put it in a place, we just click and drag it over. Okay, you've got initials. So every time I sign, it automatically adds a date block, and you can move that date block around, or you can use it, leave it right next to the signature block. You can add initials. You can add a text line. So this is going to be a required text line for the person who's signing to fill out, not just adding text. You can add a checkbox. That would be something they need to check. Okay, so if you have checkbox options, so you usually will use those in like tandem with like 2. Okay. Now, we probably want these optional, so we just click on it and then unrequire it. That allows them to select one or the other. If we have them both required, they have to click on both of them. Okay, we can have them initial their choice, right? Which one do they want? We can have them do a radio choice, which is just the little bullet points, and then they would select one of those. We can have them select from a drop down. This helps to limit their options, right? So over here, here's your define values. So you'd put option 1, comma, option 2, comma, option 3. We made this required, so that would be a required option. So now they have the drop-down options there. The other option is we have initial pages here, and this is a fabulous thing. So let's say that we wanted them to initial all the pages. This works great for like inspections and reports. We can say, hey, we want them to initial all the pages. Do you want a large, a medium, or a small initial? Do you want it on the left? Do you want it in the center, or do you want it on the right-hand side? I like my initials on the right-hand side. And then do you want them at the top of the document or the bottom of the document? I'm going to say, hey, we want right bottom of the document. Who needs to initial these pages? These 2 people here. Which documents? All this document that I added, all 27 pages. Or you could make it just specific pages, all the documents. And then you're going to hit place initials. Now on the bottom of every single one of the pages I selected, it's adding their initials for me. I didn't have to go in there and add each one individually. I think that's fabulous. All right. So there's all the blue blocks here. Again, if we wanted to change the ownership, we can just click on that box and change ownership. It'll change the color so that you know who owns it. The other thing that you have options to is signer fields. So I've got this signer selected. If I click full name, it's going to add the full name there, so I don't have to type it out. I can say, hey, we want to add the date, and that doesn't have to be connected to their signature block. It just, whenever they sign it, it will auto put that date. Here's the timestamp that you could add in, or you can add in their email addresses. Okay. So those are the signer fields. The bottom option is the markup. So here's where you could add a text box. You just click it wherever you want to add that text box. Here you would add text. This isn't going to be connected to any specific signer. It's going to just put that text onto the document. So I use this oftentimes if I've got a seller who is going to respond to an offer, right? And they're going to counter that offer. Oftentimes then what I do is I come in here to the text box. I click over here where it says that it's going to be a counter offer. I click there. I put an X there, and I just move that over the little block. And now I've got my box checked. So that's how I do that. I use the text box here in the signing, throw it on there. You could highlight something or also do an ellipse, which is like a little circle that they can select. So that's like the radial button there. Oh, so let's go ellipse here. Boop. Oops, hold on. See, I can make a circle, so I could select something. Ta-da! Or you can highlight things. Okay. So those are your options under signing tools. Layouts here, pre-placed signing fields and markouts. We want to apply layouts. We have that, and then we have the purchase agreement. Let's see if this will work here. Assign signature layouts. Thinking hard. Okay, we're going to wait for that for a minute. So that was layout options and then assign document layouts. Working hard. All right. No, we're stuck. We're stuck waiting to do. Oh, there we go. All right. So it did that. Here's, hey, who do you want? Assign those signature blocks. Now, let's see here. Buyer's signature. It still did not assign those appropriately. No, it did. That one did not work this time. So there you go. Layout options is a fail. All right, you can manage those options. Here's your other options. You can change signatures, signing details, expiration dates, reminders, the ID position, because it's going to, at the very bottom or the top of the form, it's going to say that it was sent out via Authentisign. Okay, so once you have all the signature blocks in there, again, that was under tools. Then you're going to hit the next button. We're going to see if we can get it to work at all today. It's really angry at me. Anyways, you hit next, it's going to pop up a little screen. It's really angry at me today. And then that's where you can go in there and edit the emails, or you can send it out. Okay, so you can edit, or you just hit next and it'll send that email out for them to sign. Oh, here we go. Finally. All right, so here we go. Finalize the signing setup. When does it expire? And how often do you want them reminded? Like once a day, every 2 days, every 3 days. And then you can customize those invites. Otherwise, it's going to go with whatever your default is. So if you customize, then you do one for each person, and that would be what gets emailed out to them. Okay, and then you're just going to hit the send button here. I'm going to go ahead and send that because I want you to see inside of ZipForms what that looks like when you send it. So again, we got there through the editor. So we went to edit some forms, and then we went from the forms to the signatures. You could bypass that by selecting the forms that you wanted signed, and then you could just come up here and hit the e-sign button, and it'll take those forms and head into e-sign directly from there and bypass the editor. So if there are forms that don't need edited, you can bypass that here. All right. If we sent some forms out up here on the dark gray, we click that e-sign. That's going to take us to any existing packets. So if it was completed, it would say complete. This one just says sent. So if we click on it, it's going to say, hey, here are all the signers on there. Here's who us authenticated, and approved would be completed. So authenticated is they've clicked on the link and gone to the website, but they haven't signed everything yet. And approved is they've finished the signing process. Okay, from here under action items, you could resend those invitations. So if somebody's like, I didn't get it, you could resend. You can also add a CC here. So you can add a CC from contacts or a new CC. So if somebody needs a copy of those forms, maybe you forgot to send it on CC to your transaction coordinator. I do this all the time. However, I also never remember to come back in here then and add her on, but that would be a good thing to do. We should always add our transaction coordinator onto anything that we're sending out so that they know that we've sent it and they have copies of it. Also, by adding it as a CC, once it's completed, they get copies of it. I no longer have to forward those documents to my TC. So you could do it here as well. If we need to make changes to it or cancel it, then we would hit reset. And just so you know too, you can also do this right from this little radial drop down. You can resend the invitations, reset, duplicate, or signing details. Signing details is what we just had open. So if I wanted to make changes or cancel it, I'm going to hit the reset button. This will reset the Authentisign data. Now keep in mind, if we reset it and one person's already signed, it's going to delete their signatures. They're going to have to sign again. Okay. So we're going to hit reset. It's going to reopen up that file for us. Again, it's going to delete any existing signatures for people who already signed. And it's going to allow us to add documents, change it, fix a signature that was wrong, whatever you want. And then you can hit next, and it will prompt you to move forward through to resend this file. The original link, if they click on it, it's going to say voided. Okay, but if we are like, I really just wanted to cancel it, once it opens this, we hit the back button. I don't really care whether it saves or doesn't save. Come on, Authentisign, you could do it. It normally works better than this. I don't know what the issue is today. Probably because I've had it open for a while and messing around with everything in there. It's overworked and underpaid. All right. Here, it takes us back to the file. So now if I go back into eSign, now it says draft, which meant that it's not sent out. From here, if I go to the drop down, I can actually delete this signing package. So if I made an error and I'm resending the package out, you get reset, come back here. You can either just leave it as a draft and let it sit there forever, or we could say delete it. Yes, I want to delete it. Now it's gone. Okay, so that's how to navigate through ZipForms, how to navigate through Authentisign and how they work together. I'm not going to walk you through how to use DocuSign only because number one, I don't have it. And number two, Authentisign is free. its functionality is as good, if not better than DocuSign at this point. So I would just use it. So there you go. Hopefully that was helpful. If you guys have any questions, you can throw it in the comments section below. We do monitor those, or feel free to reach out to me directly. Have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.